Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I'm a sociologist who's taught at John Jay College and Yeshiva University here in New York. Burlesque originated in 17th century Italian theater as a type of comic interlude between acts. It derived from the Italian word burlesco, or burla, meaning a joke, ridicule, a parody, or mockery. In the United States, burlesque often is referred to as performances, extravaganzas in a variety show form, popular from the 1860s to the 1940s, often in cabarets and clubs as well as theaters. It featured bawdy comedy and female exotic dancers. Star strippers included Sally Rand, Gypsy Rose Lee, Tempest Storm, and Blaze Starr. Comics who appeared in burlesque included some of the most famous: Fanny Brice, Mae West, Eddie Cantor, Abbott and Costello, W.C. Fields, Jackie Gleason, Al Jolson, Sid Caesar, Danny Kaye, Red Skelton, Sophie Tucker, and Lenny Bruce. The famed movie critic Roger Ebert once said, "Burlesque was born and thrived at a time when America was engaged in the early stages of the current moral revolution, when the rural Puritan ethic and the sophistication of the cities discovered each other." Burlesque was essentially vaudeville plus sex, and in the early days the sex was direct, naive, and almost innocent. The early 20th century was also the beginning of mass commercialized leisure activities in America. And New York City, as usual, was at the heart of this new culture, and for many New Yorkers, this meant wholesome, family-oriented activities such as vaudeville shows, movies, and trips to Coney Island. There was also another option growing: burlesque. Now, one of the most famous American versions of this period was the one portrayed in the movie The Night They Raided Minsky's. It was a fictional account of the invention of the striptease at Minsky's Burlesque in 1925. Minsky's was the most famous resident burlesque company in the country and was headquartered in a Lower East Side theater and culture that produced robust, exuberant, and provocative burlesque entertainment. The story concerns a young Amish girl, Britt Eklund, who comes to the big city and is blinded, as they say, by the glittering marquees. She dreams of dancing at Minsky's. She's pursued for her attentions by two comics in the company, visited by her bearded fundamentalist father who wants to bring her home, challenged by the police and the moral reformers of her day, and in the final wild scene, she accidentally, inadvertently, and charmingly invents the striptease. The free flow of liquor and the uninhibited atmosphere of burlesque was dealt a serious blow during the 1920s and 30s with the enforcement of prohibition. New York City Mayor LaGuardia further clamped down on it in the early 40s, effectively putting it out of business. But since the 1990s, there's been a tremendous revival and renewed interest in burlesque on both sides of the Atlantic. A new generation seems nostalgic for the spectacle and glamour of the classic American burlesque experience. Our guest today on the Radical Imagination is one of the major new and young forces in this revival. She touches all the bases in the age of Aquarius that is the new American burlesque. She hails from upstate rural New York, came to the big city at 18, and is the only child from a traditional Irish Catholic family. She considers herself an empowering feminist, is a talented actress, comedian, and trained dancer. She's now appearing on the Lower East Side at the classic burlesque Box Theater on Christie Street in the powerful off-Broadway play about the iconic Lenny Bruce, I'm Not a Comedian. It's been created by and is starring Ronnie Marmo. Lenny himself felt at home and did some of his best work performing at burlesque houses. His wife, Honey, the great love of his life was also a burlesque performer and showgirl. On top of that, our guest is Miss Coney Island of 2019, the beach that I spent a good part of my childhood enjoying. So it doesn't get any better than that. Welcome, Pearls Daly, to the Radical Imagination. It is great to have you here.
Oh, Jim, thank you so much for having me back.
I'm so glad you're here to explain this wonderful phenomenon entertainment that we now know as the revival of burlesque in New York. You're in the forefront of this.
Thank you.
What did you think about the Saturday Night Live sketch there? How did that hit you on that? I know you were laughing.
Well, I love Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And I love that sketch. You really got me. That's a great opener. And I feel like I hope that they do more sketches like that. I think that was one of the best ones I've seen them do in a long time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And now your own work takes off on the historical foundation of burlesque, right? You're a trained dancer?
Yes,
So-
that was my first foray into performing was dance. I had a lot of energy as a little kid, and as soon as I could, my mom put me in dance classes.
Because you're up in rural New York and
Yes.
a lot of open spaces and
Yes.
running and whatever you do,
Yeah.
chasing the
Yes. Chasing
dairy
rainbows.
farm, the cows and whatever.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to be, but it was, so you had a lot of energy, as you said, and immediately when you're 18, you decided you want to go to the big city.
Always.
Always.
That was always my plan. It's really strange. Recently I was upstate about 2 weeks ago for a burlesque festival in Ithaca, New York. So shout out to Ithaca, New York. They have a wonderful new festival. It's their 4th year doing it. And they have burlesque acts from all over New York, and international acts come in and they perform burlesque in upstate New York for, that crowd. And so I've been really lucky. I've been doing their festival every year.
Well, we have this. Appropriately, we have a clip of that.
Oh, perfect.
You were in the first burlesque festival, right? Is that
Their first one, yeah.
the first one? This is up in Ithaca.
Ithaca, New York.
All right, so here you are in the
Yes.
first annual now burlesque festival up in
my
Ithaca,
goodness, yes.
New York.
Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you'll miss me while I'm alone and as blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Stars fading as I linger on you, babe. I'm craving your kiss. I'm going to linger till dawn, dear. Just singing, there's till sunbeams find you. Dreams that leave all worries behind you. And in your dreams, whatever they'll be, dream a little dream of me.
Now, come on. This is anybody that thinks that's simple to do. I mean, people are riveted. I mean, there's a presence on stage there that you have captured. It's amazing. And
Thank you.
no, seriously.
Thank you so much. I have to. That was a trip
Tell
down
us.
memory lane. So
Yeah.
that act specifically is special to me for a few reasons.
Okay.
Number one, I love that song, and that particular rendition of it is my very dear friend Dandy Wellington, who is a Harlem native, and that's from his debut album. So shout out to Dandy Wellington for that version of that song.
Okay.
And he has a wonderful band, and he is very old New York. And I love his version of that song because I think it really captures like the sweetness of the tune, and I just loved how light it was. And that costume is inspired by Lana Turner.
Yeah, what's on your head there?
It's a turban. It's a turban with stars.
Stars.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking on what's on your head, you are wearing.
Yes.
What's on your head?
It is the crown of, it's my Miss Coney Island
The tiara.
crown. Yes.
The crown. Wonderful.
Yes.
So, but again, there's so much going on there. What are you attempting to accomplish? What are you trying to do there as the performer in reaching out to the audience and connecting? And what's your
my goal? Well, when
Yeah.
I'm on stage, I like
or
to
in that particular number, or just generally?
Sure. I like to make people feel good and to bring joy to their lives. I mean, there's so much going on in our day to day that I think can be a bit of a downer. I mean, the current state of our world is a little crazy. So I like to bring people back to a more simple time and to
Really?
bring, joy and beauty to their lives.
And so the character that you are presenting on
Yeah.
stage, very much who you are at heart.
Yes, I really do. It's interesting when I got into burlesque and then when I started doing it full time, a lot of people asked me if I was going to keep my real person name. And I was like, no, because I think that this is actually really who I am. Like Pearls is really who I am.
Pearls meaning, well, how did you choose that name, Pearls?
At the time, I was working at a really wonderful old store on the Upper West Side called Off Broadway Boutique.
Sure.
Are you
yeah.
familiar with it?
Yeah, in the 70s, is it? Or,
Yeah, 72nd.
Yeah,
I was there for a
somewhere.
long time. It was run by this wonderful woman named Lindell Cohen. And she was very
Sure.
glamorous. Yeah, that was
In
her
fact,
baby.
In fact, Bea, my wife, and I, who you just did her show
Yeah.
on Progressive Radio Network, had gone in there a number of times. I
Yeah.
met her. Now, is it still there?
Unfortunately, no. She passed away a couple years ago now.
Because we used to go, and that street in particular, because you go back again to the sweetness of, in a way, a bygone era
Yeah.
that you're trying to bring back. 72nd Street was one of those streets. There was a lot of Jewish deli and bakery.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and so on. And
Oh,
there's
yeah.
there's actually a cabaret there too.
Yeah, yes. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it's great.
Same-
You go upstairs.
Yeah, go
Yep,
upstairs.
the Triad.
The Triad. Absolutely.
Triad.
Absolutely.
And they have all the great Jewish delis. And then if you go towards Central Park West, you have the Dakota.
Absolutely.
And you have Central Park, you have Strawberry Fields.
No, but listen. Okay, so you
that
were
stuff.
up by Ithaca there, right?
Yes.
Why? So how did you know about it all? Did your family come back, brought you down as a kid to New York and much?
No,
or
you know what?
not really?
No. I mean, New York was, I didn't actually get to come to New York City until I was in 10th grade. And I came on a school trip to see Chicago, actually. It was a school trip. But
Oh, the Bob Fosse
yeah,
play. Yeah.
which was terrific. But it's interesting how I've always known I was going to live in New York. I would read about it. And anything I could get my hands on to read about, New York, I was just like, that's where I'm going to live. That's where I'm going to go. It's just what I always told people and what I was always going to do. I've never wanted to live anywhere else.
And so you've tried to capture that nostalgia and bring back a bygone era, as we've said, and again, the persona of a more innocent time, maybe a coquettish time. Do you
Yeah.
perceive yourself as a performer who is what? Telling us about what it was to be a little more innocent and yet we're not all that innocent, are we? At this point. So how do you mix? I'm as the opening we had, how does sort of the Puritanism, if you will, of America meet with the, if you will, the more sophistication of the city and the diversity and so on? Does burlesque try to help us understand that, the modern world and the enormous diversity and conflicts that are going on?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that's great about burlesque is that it's, no matter what, it's very authentic. You know, when you go to a burlesque show, you're seeing a real person doing a real dance and doing a real act. You know, nothing can be photoshopped. There's, nothing false about it. And I think that's why it appeals and intrigues more people, than people who are more conservative. It's authentic, that's what's so great about it.
Who's your audience? Do
honestly,
family,
women.
men?
I would
now what's okay? No, just help me help our audience understand that, because there's all kinds of burlesque, right?
Sure.
There's drag. There's you name it, right?
Yeah.
So women come to see you in particular,
Yes.
or the shows generally.
Both.
That you perform at both.
Both. I think about 90% of the audiences at burlesque shows are women.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So like Saturday Night Live there, that
Yeah,
sketch.
absolutely,
Okay.
which is why it's so funny to me. But I think that women are looking for representations of themselves,
Really?
being sexy and authentic. And I think that burlesque has more of that than a lot of mainstream culture.
Explain that a little more, because we're not talking now about images of guys in raincoats coming in, right? I mean,
Right.
Or the old 42nd Street.
Sure.
Which,
I mean, there are fellas that come out. There are men that come to
Right.
burlesque shows. But I think that a lot
women are looking for role models or
Yeah, I mean, because not everybody is a supermodel. Not everybody is, 7 feet tall and a size 0, And I mean, there's a place and there's a beauty with that too. But I think that it can be really discouraging to a lot of women who don't see themselves in, print ads, in movies, in TV and film and pop culture. So
Okay.
I think that burlesque, there's a lot of different body types, there's a lot of different cultural backgrounds, and you can find representation in that. And then when you see somebody who you identify with being confident on stage, and being sexy and really owning who they are, I think that it in turn, you believe that you can do that. Whether it's in private, whether it's in private for your your loved one or just for you.
For you. So do you get pushed back by some of the women, the feminists, who say, "Well, look, you're just again selling sex, and you're." I mean, what do some of the women who oppose this say to you, and how do you?
It's interesting. I mean, I
What do you
have
say to
gotten
them?
people. I always love the women who come up to me at shows or whatever, and they're like, do you really want to be doing this? And it's like, I do, absolutely. Nobody's forcing my arm.
Right.
I love what I do.
Right.
And to be honest, I've never felt more free doing burlesque than I have any other job that I've ever had.
Obviously, you were having a lot of fun there.
Thank
and you
you.
could tell it wasn't, as you say, very authentic. And we have another clip too of, I think this is the one with you, champagne glass. Or,
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's put that on. You're having more fun in this clip as well. Now, what were you attempting to do there? What was that routine about?
So that routine was very Gatsby inspired because the whole party is a Great Gatsby party. So they wanted high energy. They wanted something that really captured, that time, but also kind of with a modern twist. So it's like the music that I was using was actually like a remixed version of, an old-timey song.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was at the Capitol?
Yes.
Which is a club down the Lower East Side.
Lower East Side.
That has this annual Great Gatsby party?
Yes.
So there's many of these clubs in the city?
There's a
that has
lot.
all kinds of different themes and so on?
Well, the Gatsby party is a special thing. That pops up about once a year for them. But there's all kinds of, vintage events, if you will. And even not just like vintage. I mean, there's a lot of, burlesque happening in the city and things like that. So in New York, we have a great scene. You can go out and see a burlesque show or some burlesque every night of the week in New York.
So it's almost like stand-up comics, too, that travel around in various venues and so on. So it's sort of, it's underground, and yet it's also out there for the public to view.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, in a sense.
There is. I think there's
cities.
been a few, mainstream burlesque things that have happened that have piqued the interest of people. So when people come to New York, a lot of people want to see burlesque. So, that's been great. Yeah.
Now, you're now working and doing your work, your routine, and in Lenny Bruce.
Yes.
I'm not a comedian, I'm Lenny Bruce. This fabulous production that both Beatty and I have seen now twice. And listen, Ronnie does an incredible job, but you were added just recently now, and it adds a tremendous dimension, bringing back again that feeling you're back in the 40s and 50s in these burlesque houses. So how do you see yourself there? Because Lenny Bruce, again, was this iconic, rebellious comic, iconic figure that tried to push back against the censors and the moral policemen of his day. So you fit in very nicely there, don't you?
Yes, I like to think so.
You identify very much with that struggle. And is that part of it also? Do you feel yourself you're on the front lines of, I don't want to make this into a political revolution, but in a sense it is, isn't it?
It is. I think what I do is inherently political.
How so?
God, leaving my house as a woman is inherently political. Everything is policed. And I feel like we are absolutely at the forefront because you're doing it. I'm every day going on stage, being a woman, sharing that part of myself with people. I think
and your sensuality,
absolutely,
your creativity,
absolutely,
and your, again, the sense of fun, imagination, that you then connect to people, as you say, bring a certain joy to their lives, and as you were saying before, to increase the feelings of sexuality, if you will, too.
Yeah.
About life, that this is a world to enjoy, to get pleasure from.
Yes.
And whatever that entails, you are attempting to get us to understand that is a big part and should be a major part of our life, not war and violence.
Absolutely.
And the greed and the viciousness, the cruelty of separating families at the border and so on. You're bringing families together, in a sense.
Absolutely. And I feel really strong when I perform, too.
That's so obvious.
Thank you.
I mean, how so? How does that, you're just, it just overcomes you, right? When you're on the stage there, you're taken with the energy that you're feeling from the audience too, because you can tell that the audience is really getting into it as well.
Yeah.
So it makes all the difference.
I feel my strongest when I'm on stage because I really tap into that part of myself. And I think that I always aim to bring that out in people. And I also think it's really interesting you know, with burlesque specifically, because you get to see a really strong person. I don't want to say just women, because, you know, more than just women perform burlesque, but for my sake, you know, as a woman, I think that it's interesting to see somebody be really powerful and really strong and really fierce, and not have them be frightening. You know what I mean? Not have them be or threatening, or, you know, violent, anything of that nature. I think that that's a really beautiful thing to tap into. So I always love to be that, you know, for people, and I hope that people get that when they see me, because I think we need more of that. I think there's this crazy thing where, you know, you can be whatever you want, and I think you should, but I don't think there's nothing wrong with like wanting to be sexy and wanting to be really, really strong. I don't think they have to be separate things.
What would you say to in this Me Too generation here, in terms of we're having all kinds of issues and difficulty with one's public sexual feelings toward each other, and we're not sure what those boundaries are. How does what you're doing perhaps enlighten us?
Well, I think there's a lot of great things about the Me Too movement. I think with burlesque, you know, burlesque is a great education in boundaries. And I think that that's what the Me Too movement is, you know, one of the main things is people who cross boundaries in inappropriate and icky ways. You know, I think that you can enjoy your sexuality. I think you can enjoy other people's sexuality, but you shouldn't make them feel bad. And there has to, you know, be a boundary there.
And know the boundaries,
you know,
right.
And I think that burlesque actually communicates that very well. It's like, you're looking at me, you're enjoying this moment, but you're not taking anything from me. I'm giving it to you, and we're having this exchange.
And getting us out of this puritanical box
Yes.
that America has put itself in. At least, you know, that's part of our heritage in a sense. So when we have a vice president that can't have dinner with, you know, another woman, not his wife,
Yeah.
I mean, where's that at? And so you can imagine what he thinks about going to a burlesque show. But so we are so polarized as a country, exemplified by that example and what you're doing. So
Yeah.
what would, if our vice president was here today, what would you try to say to him?
I think that nudity empowers some people, and modesty, you know, empowers some people. And I think it comes down to just respecting who people are. And I think when you're an authentic person, there's nothing to fear.
Right.
You know.
So you would offer him, hey, come on down and see the show. If you don't want to.
If you don't want to come, you don't have to.
Exactly.
And that
so
is
live and let
A-okay.
live.
Yeah.
Now, what if the president came down, and because as we know, he has difficulties with boundaries. That sort of man approaching
me.
you or within this environment. What do you say to those sort of men?
I don't know if I say anything because I don't engage with them.
So they know, you know how
like a
to
force
put
field.
the boundaries. Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh,
So-
absolutely. Absolutely. You can feel it too. When I'm in the zone, I'm a pretty good judge of those things. I know who I can mess with, who I don't. You know, things like that. I'm like, oof. I'm just not going to go there.
So
Yeah.
if more women really knew themselves more and felt more empowered and so on, as you're saying here, there'd be less problems. I mean, because
I couldn't agree with you more.
Well,
I mean, you know,
yeah.
it's that thing where I'm not responsible for other people's intentions. I'm not responsible for other people's actions. I'm responsible for myself and how I treat people and how I treat the world and what I give in my job, in my art. You know, I have nothing but good intentions with everything that I do. And I want people to feel good. I want people to feel empowered.
Now, you're also involved, tell me a little about this project with the comic book.
Oh,
character?
yes.
Yeah. What is that about? We'll play a clip about that
sure.
in just a couple minutes. So
Sure.
What is
So,
that about?
I love you're gonna love this. So
Okay.
I am the model and the main actress for a comic book called Minky Woodcock, the girl
Minky?
Minky
Minky
Woodcock, the girl who
okay.
handcuffed Houdini. And it's a wonderful comic series created by Cynthia Von Bueller, and it's with Titan Comics, who's based out of London. They publish it and produce it. She created this wonderful character
So
in
this
this
is
great world.
online. This is
This is the
actual.
best.
Let's say again.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Okay,
I
go ahead.
love
Yeah,
Cynthia
yeah.
dearly. About 4 years ago now, she is, aside from being a very talented illustrator and artist, she also creates these immersive theater experiences for people. Very lavish stories and shows. And the first show I ever did with her was
What does that mean? The immersive.
immersive theater. So basically, it's a show, it's a play, it's
Okay.
scripted, but it's kind of like Sleep No More in that sense where you walk into the story and you walk into the world. So you're not sitting and watching a show, you're part of the show. So it moves. You know, sometimes you play a character, sometimes you're more of a voyeur, but you're in it.
And the audience knows that when they come into this.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You don't.
Okay, that
yeah,
they-
you,
that-
you
that
don't
you could-
spring it on people.
Right.
That'd be terrifying.
Okay, so they voluntarily come into, and
Yes.
they don't know what parts or what's going to happen necessarily, or do they?
Well,
Or
it depends. It
Okay.
depends on the show. But with Cynthia, it's
you have some
you know the
idea.
story, you know the backstory. And the first time I ever worked with her was I did a show called Ziegfeld's Midnight Frolic, which is actually
Okay.
based on an old Follies show that
You
used
take-
to happen.
Right, Ziegfeld Follies.
And it was centered around the death of Olive Thomas, who was a very famous showgirl who died of poisoning. And it was one of the first Hollywood scandals because they don't know if she was poisoned or if she committed suicide. So the whole night revolved around this. And I played a woman named Martha Mansfield, who was a well-known Ziegfeld girl who actually burned to death on a film set. It was very terrible. But this show was centered. I know,
Sounds
I
terrible.
know it was terrible.
Okay.
But
It's an accident, presumably, or she
yeah,
wasn't-
yeah.
Burns at the stake as a okay.
Yeah, no.
No, okay,
but,
right.
but you would have loved this show. It was at the Liberty Theater, and this is the best.
42nd Street.
42nd Street.
Yeah,
and
okay.
you know the Liberty Diner?
Yeah.
You know, okay, you know Dave and Buster's?
I don't know.
It's
that
a
name.
game place, but they have the old
Okay.
marquee there,
Uh-huh.
and there's a gorgeous old like Ziegfeld theater still there.
Yes, the facade.
Yes.
I-
So it's like a speakeasy. So you would walk through the diner and you'd open these velvet curtains and there's this huge, like a ghost, like this theater in the back of the Dave and Buster's.
okay.
at,
Yeah, I'm picturing that.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
And so
okay.
Cynthia rented this theater for this show. So this was my first time meeting her. So I did this show with her, and I'll never forget this. We were getting close towards the end of the run, and she got my attention backstage after one of the shows, and she was like, "Pearls, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm an illustrator." And I was like, "Yes, I'm familiar with your work." And she goes, "Listen, I've created a comic, a graphic novel, and you're
Okay.
the star. It's about a red-headed detective in the 1920s who solves crime."
I can see that.
And I was like,
Sure.
"Oh, okay." She goes,
Yeah.
"I want you to model for it. You're gonna act
Okay.
out. You're gonna act out the scenes, and I'm gonna draw you." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And she goes, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I was like, "I will be home." So the next day, she came over to my apartment with another actor friend of mine, and we started the early stages of this comic book. Like I tied him up, and this whole thing in my apartment. She took photos, and then she started sketching from it, and it was like an ongoing thing. And then a couple months in, her story and her sketches got picked up by Titan Comics. So
Really?
it got a whole series. And so
Okay.
the first mystery was all centered around Houdini,
Right.
which was really, really
The
cool.
great
And-
escape artist
Yes.
of the 20s, 30s.
yes.
Yeah.
And so in the comic, I go undercover as his assistant. And it's this great series. So basically, the comic does really well, and it got picked up. We did a show. We did a live version of the show this last fall, and it was terrific. And it's actually, there's going to be another adventure coming up in the spring that we're going to start working on. So
Okay,
it's kind of
which
like
is-
Nancy Drew.
Which is now soon, right?
Yeah.
We're in April. So
Yeah.
and this is a brief clip of the
show.
the first scene of
Yeah.
it. Okay, the first episode. Or,
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Minky Woodcock. Well, okay. Help us a little more on that. That was fascinating. What was a little more? What was going on there? What were you doing there?
So that's
The
that's a
spoof, a
teaser for the
parody.
show.
It's a what? I'm sorry.
That's the teaser for the show.
teaser, right? Exactly.
That happened.
Exactly.
So
okay.
basically, the whole setup is that I play this young gumshoe, if you will. My father in the series is a very famous detective.
Detective, right, okay.
And so, and actually, it's like indicated that Sherlock Holmes is the character of Sherlock Holmes is based on my father, and the whole thing is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle comes to my father to help him with a case, and my father is out of town, so I kind of weasel my way into helping Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes,
Right.
with his case.
case.
But the case, it goes awry, and I end up sad and at a bar drinking, and I befriend Bess Houdini, who just so happens to be drinking at this bar, and she thinks her husband is Harry Houdini is cheating on her, and she just fired his current assistant, and so she then we strike up a conversation, and so I get my second case of all time is going undercover as Harry Houdini's assistant, but
to find out if he's cheating.
To find out if he's cheating, but the interesting thing about where it is in that period of time is that it leads up to Harry's death, actually. So there's like the story within the story. So basically,
sort of
what it
intrigue,
is there's a lot of interesting things around Harry Houdini's death. Did he die because he was punched, or was he poisoned? There's a lot of, if you look it up online, there's a lot of interesting little,
ideas
facts
and theories
around.
about his life and death.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the case ends up,
mystery.
actually becoming that, which is interesting.
Right.
So
in a way, that this is also burlesque in a sense. In a sense, it's a parody of what? Is it another way of expressing your creativity?
Yes. And one thing that I love about Cynthia is she loves to hire burlesque artists for her work. And one thing she talks about and that I appreciate is because, as a burlesque artist, there's a certain level of confidence that you have with your body and with yourself and putting yourself out there in a way that I don't know if any other performance art has. And so getting to play this character and having a burlesque background, I definitely utilized all the tools in my tool belt to kind of create this character and to, tell this story in a really fearless way that I don't know if I would have done had I not had the experience that I have in burlesque. I also really loved the show because it was exciting to have, like there's a few scenes in it, like there's a scene where I seduce Harry. And I think that having the burlesque experience and having that confidence really kind of brought it to a different level that people really understood and that I was really proud of. There's also this, there's also a scene in the play where I'm going undercover as an art model. So I'm completely nude and I'm getting information from these kids who, are roommates with the guy who punched Houdini. So I'm like modeling for them and getting information from them, while I'm completely nude. And so those two scenes alone are very different usages of nudity in a way, which are really powerful and interesting. One is the scene where I'm art modeling. It's almost like the nudity is just like this. It's like kind of like not a big deal, and that's what makes it so funny. Is that I'm trying to get this information and I'm completely naked, and it's a riot. And then the other one is actually using nudity as a means of seduction and like getting what you want. So I think within the play, like having those two moments are really powerful. And also, it's an interesting conversation about nudity in theater and, what it all means and is it gratuitous and, I love that character and I love that time, and I love Harry.
20s and 40s,
yeah, and I love Harry Houdini. And so I'm really proud of that. Also, with the comic book element, being able to reach people all over the world and tell that story, and to be a strong female character, and to also in real life be a burlesque person. Like when you open the comic, I'm featured, I'm in there. And it's interesting because some people are like, oh, I don't know if burlesque is a legitimate form of entertainment. And if you do that, what else can you do? It's like, well, I can do anything.
Yeah.
Why not?
And be funny at it too.
Yeah.
And dramatic and so.
Absolutely.
Was this okay? You grew up as an Irish Catholic upstate. Was this natural in your background or high school and so on? Or?
I grew up in a traditional Irish Catholic family.
So do you have that sort of strength always, or this was something that has developed since you came to the city?
I've always been this way. And I lucked out because I had really supportive artistic parents.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, they're very creative people. And I think from a young age, they saw that I wanted to be a performer. So they encouraged me to be who I was. They didn't force me to do anything. And we have great communication. I've never hidden anything from them. It's all been out there. They've seen like my whole journey, and they're really, they're proud of me.
Right, and you didn't have this traditional, hard-nosed sort of Irish Catholic background and hang-ups on one's sexuality.
Well, we definitely, we went to church.
You did, okay.
And things like that. But my parents are artists. They were working artists. That was really who they were. I think it was more, my father had a even more traditional, Irish Catholic upbringing. So I think that kind of peppered how he raised me. But I think at the same time, it's like he took all the good things about that,
right?
And shared that with me, and kind of did his own thing.
Just a little confessional transparency here.
Yeah.
My mother, and I wish she still was alive because I would absolutely ask her, but as a kid, I remember she said to me that she wanted to be a dancer. I didn't know what kind, but presumably it might have been a burlesque dancer. Her grandfather from Old World said absolutely not, but she turned to art and became a rather good artist. And there was, when you talk about art or nudity in art and posing, she did that and had, did portraits and so on of people. and explored the human body in a very natural way. And so it was very healthy growing up in that sort of world. That wasn't something that was, forbidden and horrible. It was part of life. In fact, her first name was Luba. Lubov in Russian is love. And so and in fact, her purpose in her art was to create beauty and love. And she had the positive, strong energy too that you're exhibiting. So I think that we shouldn't be afraid of that sort of world and powerful energy. It's really what we need today, much more of. And I'm just so happy to have met you and been on Beatty's show. And
oh my
we'll
gosh,
go on
I love her.
Oh, she's terrific.
I love her.
That's another strong woman who,
yes,
as a sex therapist, psychotherapist, and so on, she has also been that sort of model, literally for women and so on. Now, we only have a couple more minutes, but we want to make sure we mention Miss Coney Island here,
yes,
and your efforts to make sure that the old New York still remains. So,
yes,
what are some of your efforts there, particularly in Coney Island?
Okay, so I'm currently raising money towards helping them repair their roof. If you go,
whose roof?
The freak show.
The freak show.
The freak
roof.
bar. Yes.
Right.
Which is where the 10 and 1 happens, the sideshow.
Okay.
So I feel like ever since Hurricane Sandy, they've been kind of having their struggles, and they've been slowly renovating. But I really, really want to get that roof on them. So
everybody's got to go to the boardwalk. If we don't know what you're talking
yes,
about,
yeah,
you go down to Coney Island.
Yes.
Right. You go to the boardwalk and you go to the Freaks.
The sideshow is right on Surf Avenue.
Right on Surf Avenue.
You can't miss it. It's like right on the corner.
Exactly.
Near the park.
Okay.
So basically, if you go to pearlsdaily.com, I have a donate to Coney Island page.
Okay.
And so
pearlsdaily.com.
Pearlsdaily.com, I have a whole donate to Coney section, and you can see how much has been raised so far, all the different tips and things. And so that's just, my goal for the year is to, raise money for them and to keep New York weird.
Fix that. Keep New York weird. Fix the roof.
Fix the roof.
And the other thing everybody needs to go to is this unbelievable, powerful play.
Yes.
It's going to be on Broadway. It should be on Broadway. Hopefully maybe out in East Hampton, maybe nationwide. We'll see.
Yes.
Lenny Bruce. I'm not a comedian. Lenny Bruce.
Starring the wonderful Ronnie Marmo.
One and only.
We are running Thursdays through Sundays at the Box. But check the website for the schedule, because sometimes there's variations with the show schedule. But I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce. It's been incredible.
Right in the Lower East Side again.
Yes.
So everything's coming around.
Everything's coming around.
And I'm so glad you came around to the Radical Imagination today.
Me too.
Thank you so much, Pearls. You're a joy.
Thank you so much.
You really are. You're terrific.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching us today on the Radical Imagination. My name is Jim Vrettos. We'll hopefully see you next week. And as we go out, come to the cabaret.
Put down the knitting, the book, and the broom. It's time for a holiday. Life is a cabaret, oh chum. Come to the cabaret. Come taste the wine, come hear the band. Come blow your horn, start celebrating. Right this way, your table's waiting. What good's permitting some prophet of doom to wipe every smile away? Life is a cabaret, oh chum, so come to the cabaret. I used to have this girlfriend known as Elsie, with whom I shared 4 sordid rooms in Chelsea. She wasn't what you'd call a blushing flower. As a matter of fact, she rented by the hour. The day she died, the neighbors came to snicker. Well, that's what comes from too much pills and liquor. But when I saw her laid out like a queen, she was the happiest corpse I'd ever seen. I think of Elsie to this very day. I remember how she'd turn to me and say, what good is sitting all alone in your room? Come, hear the music play. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret.